Joe Biden has had his big press conference, which was pitched in a variety of different ways. Some people called it like the big boy press conference, where he was gonna answer questions that weren't provided to those asking him. Some people said it was make or break. This is what's gonna determine if he stays in this thing. Well, coming out of it, some people think that he did an amazing job. Some people think he did the best job that has ever been done. And some people not necessarily buying it. So we're gonna run through all of those, but let's start off with those whose praise was most effusive.
First, just your impressions of the president tonight.
Listen, I think he was clear. I think he was strong. And really, Chris, he put on a masterclass in terms of complex international foreign policy. This guy has been the most transformational, most consequential president that I've seen in my lifetime. When you think about what he has been able to do, what he has been able to accomplish, there really is no comparison. He sort of hinted at maybe LBJ and FDR. Democrats, we got to stop the hand wringing. We got to stop the woe is me and understand that our guy is much better, leagues better than the other side.
I will grant Harrison that, yes, he is leagues better. The issue is that might well not be enough for the voters, but I will agree with him. I think that he is a transformational figure. I think you just need to look at like 2020 to today, and clearly some sort of transformation has happened. Done. But anyway, yeah, so look, obviously, head of the DNC, big fan of that. Let's turn now to Lawrence O'Donnell, who was also incredibly impressed.
What followed was nothing less than the most masterful, televised presidential press conference about foreign policy. There have been other presidential press conferences that have exhibited mastery at different points by some presidents, but on foreign policy, complex foreign policy, involving the Middle East and the situation in Ukraine, this is as good as it gets.
Okay, so they're very much on board. Look, I think it is fair to say that if you were hoping that this would be a repeat of the debate, hoping because that would clarify the situation and force the Democrats to take action, I don't think this was like the debate. I mean, we're gonna get to the mistakes he made, but he wasn't routinely shutting down. He showed, an understanding of the material. I'm not entirely, I believe there was a teleprompter for the speech part, but even once they got to the questions, aside from some flubs, he understood where he was and what was going on largely in the world. That said, this is the best it's ever been. It could never be better. That feels overly defensive. I'm trying to be fair here. Francesca, what's your read of this?
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
Yeah, it could never get better. This is the best we'll ever get, which actually reminds us that we are in a sad state in American politics. And even when it comes to our foreign policy, if you ask me, just look at what is happening in Gaza and the inability to reach a ceasefire. I mean, John, honestly, I watched the entire press conference, and I have to say, I was surprised. I thought he was good. He was good. He was able to get out a thought. And my second thought after good, he was able to get out his thoughts was on his best day, after being whispered the answers in his ear, there's no way Donald Trump could have answered a fraction of the questions that Biden did in terms of like NATO specific policy, in terms of the specific inner workings around Ukraine, around Israel. Like there's just, he doesn't have the attention span, nor does he care. So that immediately was struck. And I hope, folks who are like really mad at us for asking Biden to please step aside will remember that no, Donald Trump is far worse. But I still don't think that it is compelling enough for the American people, especially those who are really concerned about one of the biggest foreign policy blunders that he's had, which is the inability to reach a ceasefire with Israel and to stop this ongoing genocide for everyone involved. And that's a major reason why a lot of young people of color are staying away and are really disenchanted and certainly aren't gonna make calls for Joe Biden this time around.
Yeah. And look, again, I think you might have been on the show when I talked about this. Like, we're routinely making everybody mad, being attacked from simultaneously both sides. That's the brand of TYT. It's always been the case. It always will be the case. But I know that we're supposed to just be frothing at the mouth Biden haters, but I'm not going to be that cartoon character. I apologize. Other than maybe the hair. No, like, yes, he was fine. He's absolutely fine. And Trump could never. I mean, those things are obviously the case. So to all of there's 50,000 people writing op-eds right now. Why aren't we talking about Trump being bad? Well, first of all, because America has literally never talked about anything more than about how bad Trump is. He's really bad, we all know it. And we will continue to talk about it. Trump could not, he would have been asked a question about NATO and he would have talked about sharks attacking people or something. Mm-hmm. Everybody understands that. Biden was better. Would have been great if he had been like that at the debate. That would have been wonderful. Can't we all agree that would have been better? But anyway, I want to dive into some of the minutia because you saw in the previous clip, Lawrence O'Donnell saying that it's never been as good as it is right now. So let's take a look at how that came about in practice. So here's a question that Biden was asked.
The NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia, and whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question, that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Okay, so I think that's a good setup of a test for Joe Biden. Though that's multiple questions, he has to remember all of them. They're fairly in depth. Some of them are about a foreign policy situation. Some of them are about what he will personally do. Some of them are about, sort of relating it to what he's already done. So complex question, here is Biden's answer.
She believes that China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from Europe to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we have to make clear. China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically.
Okay, so what was there, I think, was fine. I don't know that he really addressed all of the different components of it, but he seemed to understand what he was talking about. And certainly, again, as we've said a million times, if it had been Donald Trump, he would have started talking about Taylor Swift or something. Like, he would not have been able to stay on brand. We all understand that. That said, that answer being the best it's ever been sounds weird. Like, I feel like I think Obama could take him in that respect. I don't think we're being overly harsh in saying that, okay, that was an okay answer, but I don't think, like, cabinet members of his could have provided, I think, a far more compelling and certainly more swiftly delivered answer. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a fine answer, but again, when he actually is being clear, we can actually hear the substance, and the substance to me seems like there is less of an impetus to work with China or to have any kind of diplomatic light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to Ukraine than there is to just kind of continue fear mongering. Yes, it is less fear mongering than under Donald Trump, absolutely. But it's still there. There's still been a military pivot by the United States in the South China Sea under Biden. There has still been that's just sort of chest thumping. And in terms of Ukraine, look, I believe in Ukrainian sovereignty, and we've seen the crimes that Russia has committed just in the last weeks, right? I mean, it's heinous. Mm-hmm. But what is the US's role? And for me, this is where Biden needs to be clear to the American people. Getting them lost in foreign policy issues, it doesn't, actually reach folks and where anywhere, at all, right? It's like he's not speaking to what they care about because there's no top line vision. What's our vision? What's our role for the United States in the world? Do we want to just be the weapons suppliers for these allies and or even no matter how many war crimes they commit, like Israel? Or do we want to be a force for diplomatic solution, cooperation, moving forward on real global challenges like climate change, which necessitates the role of China? If we don't actually work with China, everyone's gonna be underwater in 20 years. So that I think is my real thing, is like when he's clear, you still don't get a sense, a vision from him. Trump is just, there's a bunch of mentally unwell, undocumented immigrants running amok inside the United States. And you're like, okay, that's bizarre and untrue, but I see your vision. It's xenophobia.
Yeah, it's definitely a vision. I think it's the vision that you have as Willy Wonka takes you on a boat ride through a tunnel, but it is a vision, okay?
Yes.
It is something. Yeah, and look, he sometimes gets into that a little bit. There's not always a matchup between, I don't know, the way he would pitch America's role in the world with the role we actually play in the world in some conflicts, particularly in Gaza right now. So there's that gap. And I agree. I will say, look, before we move on to some of the mistakes, which we have to get to, I will say this was not necessarily, like if I was on Biden's team and we were like, okay, we had the bad debate and people have been like breathing down our neck. And then we had George Stephanopoulos and that was like, okay, but it didn't go super well. So we're gonna have a press conference that's gonna show his strength of the American people. I think this is not the easiest test in that it's focused on wonky foreign policy when multiple conflicts are going on around the world simultaneously. I think that's a relatively difficult. It would be easier if it was like, we're going to address the recent Supreme Court decision on, medication abortion or something. We're going to talk about like maybe a topic that he's more comfortable discussing. Although honestly, coming out of the debate, maybe abortion isn't a topic he's super comfortable discussing. I think that this is a slightly harder test. So I
think actually this is his comfort zone. To be honest,
Really?
I disagree with you, John. Yeah, I mean, I do think he got some really good points in there about like the economy, and he actually said the words corporate greed, and I was like,
He did.
Yeah, he did. He was like, keep going with that. Let's talk about it. But I do think that really, and so many people, look, it's not just his age. The last 8 months, he's been fueling and funneling money into Israel to commit their crimes in Gaza. I'm sorry to keep harping on it, but it's the reason a lot of people are staying away from the polls and are not energized around this election. And it's so sad that even though he said many, many, many words about his treatment of Israel, and maybe I should have, in hindsight, the question was, what would you have done different? And he was like, well, maybe I should have, I think he didn't even say press the Israelis more, but there was something to that effect of wanting to push them a little bit more. It's like, buddy, cut the purse strings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like any day. You can always just withhold not just 2,000-pound bombs, not just 500-pound bombs, but weaponry writ large from what is clearly a massive human catastrophe.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.